Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Breakfast Central. We know, new faces, but then again, you know us from the weekend. My name is Mazino Appeal, and welcome to Breakfast Central for a Thursday.
Yes, indeed, and I am Judith TB, and we are excited to be here with you this morning, sitting in for your usual host, and that's Olive and Osarage, who are off on assignment in the nation's capital, Abuja.
Yes, indeed. Well, they've been covering the now concluded 30th National, or rather Nigeria Economic Summit. But don't worry, we've got you covered on all the latest stories and news and updates. Of course, we have stellar analysts joining us here during the course of the show.
Absolutely. So from the headlines making waves across the country to bringing you a snapshot of what Nigerians are saying, we have got a great show lined up for you today. So let's dive right into it, shall we? And this time is with one of the top stories that has got Nigerians talking. It's a vice president, and that's Kashim Shettima. And he's set to depart Abuja for a 2-day visit to Sweden. Now, the trip is requested by President Bola Tinubu, and it focuses on bilateral engagements between Nigeria and Sweden. The vice president will meet with Swedish government officials, including the Crown Princess Victoria and the Prime Minister, to explore new avenues of cooperation in key areas like ICT, digitalization, and sustainable transport.
Well, very interesting that he's actually choosing this time to actually leave, because I know if you were raised in the 80s, once your president leaves the country, it's not the best for the country. But then again, who's in charge when the vice president then decides to take off at the same time? For the benefit of Nigeria, of course, these are going to include talks that have to do with investment in Nigeria, especially the entrepreneurial sector. So we're looking forward to that. So I guess let's look at it from the positive side. It's going to be a pretty packed schedule. While in Stockholm, by the way, the Vice President Shettima is going to be meeting with Norsken, a venture capital firm that has pledged to invest $205 million in Africa's tech sector, 40% of which will go to Nigerian entrepreneurs, like I stated from before. And that's, well, quite the boost for Nigeria's tech ecosystem. And it's exciting to see how these international collaborations are shaping Nigeria's future, especially with continuing, or rather opportunities in technology and also education. And with 12 Nigerian private sector companies joining the VP on this trip, well, that's a lot of potential for deals that could really benefit both nations. So I guess let's look forward to it and embrace it and hope that the best comes out of it. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree more, absolutely. Sounds right and also very promising. But the problem here is timing. The President Tinubu just wrapped up his 2-week trip for the UK. He's expected to come in. We're still waiting for the arrival of the presidency after his 2-week vacation to the UK. But in the meantime, if the vice president, two of the persons in charge of steering the ship, the principals, there we go, the president and the vice president, the two co-captains or who are supposed to be in charge of the economy, especially at this time, another price hike, the inflation at 32.70%. We also have a soaring cost of living, increasingly soaring. So much is, and also our Nigerian team being stuck in Libya, so much is going on. The last thing we need is our vice president leaving at this time. Now, we understand how important it is, and so that's got a lot of Nigerians talking, and the reaction has been very, very critical. I'll leave it there.
I have no problem with the president actually being on vacation.
Right.
I think we all deserve one. Mine's coming up. We all deserve one once in a while, but like you said, it's the timing of it all. And I perhaps maybe would have imagined that it would have been better consumed by the people if it wasn't the thought of a vacation. Like the vice president is doing the trip to to visit Norsken. That seems like it's going to have potential for Nigeria. But when we heard about the vacation instance, it kind of like threw everybody off, because Nigeria is going through so much. I'm very concerned about the state of petrol. I don't know how much you bought your fuel for, but I calculated everything for this week, and it came up to 111,000 naira that I spent on petrol alone. If you multiply that by 4, that will be about 444,000 naira that I'll be spending per month. So if you can imagine how that affects me or anybody else, you know, that's just incredible. So I would have thought perhaps maybe this was the time to sort that out. Of course, the reps have told that they will be taking a look at this. And they slammed and said, hey, let's get this fixed. But then again, I would have preferred if it was the principal officers that were taking this into consideration and telling Nigerians that not to worry, we're going to handle all of this. And I'm hoping that that happens anytime soon.
And again, I'm going to always point my fingers at to the opposition, and in this case, the two other parties who ran during the general elections simultaneously, side by side, with the winning ruling party, which is the Labour Party and the People's Democratic Party, and their principles. Although we have seen former Vice President Atiku Abubakar come out to, call out President Bola Tinubu. We've also seen Peter Obi, the former governor of Anambra State and the presidential candidate for the Labour Party, also call out President Tinubu. But we want to see more vocal opposition who is able to hold power accountable. We want to see more of these people who are able to come out and say, look, it's about time that we focus on what matters. No more travels. You cannot go on a vacation and you cannot go for your annual leave when the ship is sinking. No, you cannot. You have to be back in that situation room, looking at the stats, looking at the numbers, speaking to the people. If you have to be on ground to continually do this every single day to reassure Nigerians and show that, in fact, all of your policies that you are implementing and every other things that you are doing to the economy is working and the average Nigerian can see it. Until then, it's not going to work. So we need to see more vocal voices. The media is doing the best that it can, but it would now look as if it's just the media that's doing its job. It's just, opposition needs to stand up as well.
I will tell you, in any case, there has been movement. Minority Leader Aliyu Madaki, also sponsored by 111 other lawmakers, told that, hey, we have to end this. And the World Bank also suggested that you can't increase petrol prices anymore. We had the situation with Forex, the Naira dipping, and then you had the situation with what else now? Now, all of that seems to be mending itself.
Right.
And they've warned that any further increase in petrol price would destabilize any healing that the economy had done, inflation especially. So I would imagine that this is one time that the principals, whether it's the lawmakers, the presidency, the vice president, whoever is taking a critical look at what's happening in Nigeria right now. And hopefully, I'm hoping that we'll start to see a reduction in the price of petrol, because that's the one thing that affects everybody from business to individual consumption. Whatever it is you're buying, the effects are just there every single place you go. I can't do fast food anymore, because the cost of getting fast food is actually much more than actually cooking at home. So you better just go home to your wives, gentlemen, and get packed foods and make sure that that's what you take to work. Right. We all have to make
and everyone continually makes this slim fitting, so to speak. And what's interesting, as we're talking about, the price of petrol and how it could tip, the economy if nothing is done now in terms of the pricing and the continual price hike. And can I just say that World Bank, stand one, please. Like, be in one spot if you have to. Because on the sidelines of the now concluded Nigerian Economic Summit, the 30th anniversary, it was conversations about, this, policies are necessary, the effects of this would not be felt now until 10 to 15 years from now. You say that, and at the same time, you're saying we can't afford another price hike. But the truth of the matter is that the refineries and everything else that is supposed to serve as somewhat of what's the word now I'm looking, cushioning, it's not working. We don't have the refineries up and running. Those are the implementations, those are the strategies that our government should have made, not just now, prior to this time of removal of subsidy, to at least have at least one of the refineries. I mean, we've had this conversation on Breakfast Extra too many times, to have this working so we can stabilize our prices enough. But then, unfortunately, here we are.
Well, indeed. But if you stick around with us, we'll get to analyze these stories and more right here for Breakfast Central. I practiced so much not to say Breakfast Extra. I almost missed it there. But let's begin with our top stories for this morning for a Thursday.
And we started with this one here as reps demand reversal of petrol cooking gas price hike. And we also go on to Rivers and look at the crisis there as the Assembly moves against defected lawmakers. And lastly, we head to a very sad news here in Jigawa. Scores were killed and many injured in the Jigawa tanker explosion. We also take a look at African governments in action threatening food security ahead of World Food Day. And lastly, at the end of the show today, in our second hour, the 8 o'clock hour, it will be the newspaper front page review. But for now, Mazino is on standby to bring you the breakfast headlines.
Now let's begin breakfast headlines in Nigeria, where the leaders of the Nigeria Labour Coalition and the Trade Union Congress are currently meeting with representatives of the federal government at the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation over the recent hike in fuel prices. Present at the meeting are the National Security Advisor Malam Nuhu Ribadu, Labour Minister Nkiruka Onyejiorcha, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy Wale Edun. Others in attendance include Mohammed Idris, Information Minister, Heineken Lokbobiri, Minister of State for Petroleum, Ekberikbe Ekbo, Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, and representatives of the Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation Limited. In the meantime, the House of Representatives has called on the federal government to immediately reverse the recent hike in the prices of petrol and cooking gas, given the current economic hardship being felt across the country. The price of premium motor spirit, also known as petrol, jumps to 1,013 naira per litre, resulting in an increase in transportation costs across major cities in Nigeria. The resolution of the House praying for the intervention of the executive arm of government followed the adoption of a motion of urgent public importance moved on the floor of the Green Chamber during Wednesday's plenary session by the Minority Leader Kingsley Chinda and 100 others. The House also urged the Central Bank of Nigeria to implement monetary policies that will mitigate the adverse effect of fuel price hikes on inflation, particularly with regard to essential goods and services. So a rather sad story now. A petrol tanker exploded in Majia town, Tora local government area, in a devastating incident on Wednesday morning, claiming the lives of at least 105 people and leaving 50 others hospitalized. The explosion occurred around 12:30 a.m. when the driver of the tanker, en route from Kano to Nguru in Yobe State, lost control near Khadija University, Majia. According to the police public relations officer of the Jigawa State Command, Lawan Adam, the tragedy was triggered by residents rushing to collect spilled petrol after the tanker overturned. Adam added that the residents were scooping fuel from the overturned tanker when the explosion happened, igniting a massive inferno that killed 94 people instantly. And in more news, in the meantime, the Jigawa State Police Command has contributed, or rather attributed, the high number of casualties at the injuries in Tuesday's fuel tanker explosion to desperate attempts by locals to scoop fuel from the spilled product following the accident. The command's public relations officer, DSP Lawan Shisu, conveyed this in a voicemail sent to journalists in Kano on Wednesday. Shisu explained that the police faced significant challenges in controlling the scene as many bystanders ignored warnings and approached the accident site, putting themselves in danger. The injured were swiftly transported to General Hospital in Aringim, where medical personnel are working tirelessly to treat the victims. Now, away from that, the Senate says rumors of impeachment of the President of the Senate are coming from paid agents bent on causing confusion in the polity. Reacting to an online publication which claimed that there were on-the-ground moves to remove him from office, President of the Nigerian Senate, Godswill Akpabio, said there was no end to the manipulation of social media by people with ulterior motives. He describes such reports as fake and should be disregarded. Akpabio thereafter asked the Senate Committee on Special Duties to investigate the matter and report back as soon as possible.
There is no limit to social media. And we are here sitting down and doing our work very peacefully, oblivious of the mischief that is going on behind us. It's part of what we pass through on a daily basis. It's either they use AI to inject something to turn it around in order to drive traffic. I understand that they are being paid by YouTube if they have a lot of traffic. So whoever brought out this fake news must be getting a lot of payment because of the traffic going on. but I hope the public is aware that this is total fake news and that the chamber is very stable and the issue of impeachment does not come in. So, Kaka, please investigate and report back to us as soon as practicable. As the Senate.
In East Africa, security forces in Mozambique opened fire on Wednesday to disperse hundreds of supporters of opposition candidate Venancio Mondlane, who claims to have won the election held a week ago. According to activists, at least one person was injured in the shooting in the northeastern city of Nampula. A video circulating online also suggests this, though authorities have not confirmed the incident. Mondlane, along with several hundred supporters, had marched through the city earlier to protest against the announcement by election authorities on Monday that the ruling party, Frelimo, had won the 9 October vote in Nampula province with 66% of the votes. Nampula, the largest province in Mozambique, is known to be an opposition stronghold. And that's all the breakfast headlines this morning. Now let's head back to the News Central.
Every time I see that that montage of the teacup, I always keep wondering, that's a lot of sugar, isn't it? You're watching Breakfast Central here on News Central TV. I am Judith TV. Now, we just concluded the World Food Day, by the way, and also concluded is the Nigerian Economic Summit, which was the 30th anniversary. And one of the conversations that was had there was about food security. Now, agricultural stakeholders have expressed worry over the unwillingness of African governments to commit 10% of their budgets to agriculture in line with the Malabo 2014 agreement, thereby threatening Africa's food security. Now, this was during a plenary session on the sidelines of the Nigerian Economic Summit group holding in Abuja with the theme Tackling Hunger. Now, we had our correspondent, Joshua Amarai, who was there, and he has more on this report. Take a look.
According to the 2023 Global Hunger Index ratings, 8 out of 9 selected countries worldwide have been confirmed to have high rates of hunger, with Africa being the region with the most severe cases. To address these challenges, food security experts in Nigeria convened for a plenary session on the sidelines of the 30th Nigerian Economic Summit in Abuja on tackling hunger. A representative of Oxfam International in the plenary lamented the unwillingness of African countries to honor the Malabo Declaration to commit to fighting hunger.
In 2014, African states have all committed to invest 10% of their budget in the agricultural sector. But our studies have shown clearly that the average percentage being spent by African governments in the agricultural sector is around 3%, including in Nigeria.
She also expressed worry that major countries are failing to meet the Paris Agreement's goal of providing $100 billion annually to help developing nations cope with climate change.
Actually, and ironically, our studies have shown that from the amount which is actually far beyond the $100 billion that is being spent, 70% of this amount is given to the countries as form of loan.
The Chief Executive Officer of Flour Mills Nigeria PLC was in attendance at the session, recommended compiling a centralized database of smallholder farmers to help tackle farming challenges in a bid to address food insecurity.
How do we get a census of farmers to know exactly who's farming, who's planting, what they are planting, what their yield is on an annual basis, and track that? Now, our relationship with them from an offtake point of view means we're in a position to get a significant amount of that data. We need to be able to then sit down with government and populate a central database that all of us can look at, so that the funding that needs to be provided is directed particularly to where it needs to go.
Nigeria's World Food Programme Country Director says that there is an urgent need for Nigeria to address ongoing conflicts in farming communities which are affecting farming.
Now, 60% of what the World Food Programme does, what the United Nations does in terms of dealing with food insecurity across Africa, is related to conflict. So it really is a big factor driving hunger in countries like Sudan, of course, and in DRC. both Sudans and in northeast Nigeria.
Experts here urge government and stakeholders to push for fair climate action and support small-scale farmers, especially women who drive Africa's agriculture. They say these women are crucial to feeding their communities, but face significant funding and resource challenges. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarai.
Joshua Imarai there from the Economic Summit just concluded. Well, let's do a short break now, and when we come back, more inside for Breakfast Central.
And it's time for us to get started on Breakfast Central. Let's focus on the ongoing political developments in Rivers State, where the House of Assembly, led by Speaker Victor Okojumbo, has moved to invoke the provisions of the 1999 Constitution against 25 members who are loyal to the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike. Now, these lawmakers who defected to another political party now face the possibility of losing their seats. The Assembly has also expressed frustration with the Independent National Electoral Commission, that's INEC, for its failure to conduct by-elections to fill these vacant seats, leaving large sections of Rivers State without representation.
And so to help us understand the dynamics at play and what this means for the state's governance, we're joined by Ogbonna Nwoke, as a former member of the Rivers State House of Assembly. Mr. Nwoke, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, sir.
Thank you so much. I was a member of the National Assembly, not state.
All right. Thank you for that correction, sir.
Apologies for that.
Yes. Now, so let's start with the recent motion presented by the Rivers State House of Assembly. What's your reaction, first off? Let's get that out the way. What's your reaction to the Assembly's decision to invoke the provision of the 1999 Constitution against the 25 members loyal to Nyesom Wike? Do you think this is justified?
Well, I think here we are not talking about numbers. We are not talking about justification. We are talking about constitutional provisions. And frankly, the Martins Amehule-led faction was the first to take steps that not many people here understood. They said that the lawmakers, legitimate lawmakers who have not defected, have been suspended or something like that, say accusing them of not attending plenary. Okay, and you see, it's become a ding-dong affair in Rivers, you know, because of the ongoing fight between the Minister of FCT and the Governor of Rivers State. And quite frankly, looking at it from the perspective of the Rivers people, people are honestly tired of this fighting. The fact that the attention of the administration is being distracted, the fact that a peaceful state is being dragged into the open by combatants, and also the fact that we think that we must travel along the trajectory that has taken Rivers State in terms of development and provision of infrastructure to where we are now. So, frankly, the four lawmakers who are led by Amehule drew the first blood. They were the ones to create this impression that they are conquering, only drawing attention to the provision of the Constitution, which is 1091G, you know, which says that if you abandon the political party upon which you were elected, the platform that brought you to power, then you have no business remaining in the assembly. And so that's where we are now.
And so I have to ask this question, right? With these 25 seats now vacant following the defections of these 25 members, the House has expressed frustration with INEC's delay in conducting by-elections. So as a former member of the National House of Assembly, how critical is it for these by-elections to take place promptly? And what do you believe it's behind INEC's delay?
I think there's been a litany of court actions. While some people argue that the constitutional provision itself is equitable, others think it's something that is subject to arguments in court. Even when it is clear the Supreme Court has ruled severally on matters relating to defections of lawmakers, of the recent ones being that of a lawmaker from Labour who was relieved of his seat, and lawmakers in Cross River State too. Now, the point here is that perhaps, I'm not going to speak for INEC because I don't work in INEC, but I'm thinking strongly that perhaps the ongoing court actions, may in the main be responsible for its inability to conduct the by-elections. The implication is that perhaps INEC is waiting for an order, a proper order from the judiciary to commence that process.
Now, it will seem that INEC seems, like you've just said, INEC seems to be waiting for the judiciary, but should that be the natural order of things? Should INEC actually be waiting for the judiciary? Because in this case, it seems like polity now is being decided by a judiciary instead of INEC itself. If the law states that if they're absent or if there's a resignation, there should be a by-election, then INEC should just take that over instead of wait for a judiciary to, to make action.
This is the point. The constitutional provision is very clear. It's not something that INEC ought to sit on the fence. But this is Nigeria, where officers look up to Oga at the top. So the implication is that perhaps there are signals that INEC probably is waiting for, maybe legitimately from the courts. Because here, we say we have an independent electoral commission, and this means that the independent electoral commission should act independently. This may not be the case, as we are seeing in Rivers, where INEC appears to be looking behind his back. So, but I think that we ought to, they say the wheels of justice grind slowly but surely. And our expectation here in Rivers is that at the fullness of time, INEC will do what is right.
Speaking of INEC doing what is right, we have to talk about this. The Speaker of the House also called out INEC for not filling a seat that has been vacant since the death of a member from Kana. Hopefully I got that correctly, which is part of the, I think, local government areas there in Rivers State. How do you think of this in terms of, representation? Do you think this lack of representation affects the governance of the entirety of Rivers State, especially in regions where constituencies are currently without representation?
Honestly, the basic reason behind the representation is that those who are elected represent their constituents. And so in the case of an unfortunate departure of a lawmaker who died in course of service in state, the expectation has been that INEC would do the best in terms of organizing elections, but has not done so. Maybe again, it may want to organize all of the elections together. Perhaps. I'm not, like I said, I'm not holding any brief for INEC. But what this should be is a wake-up call to INEC. INEC must discharge its responsibilities to the Nigerian people, not to the government of the day. And frankly, democracy has become a way of life. And quite a lot of Nigerians are looking forward to participating in the electoral process. You should take an example of what happened in Rivers a week or so when we went for local government elections. You will see the enthusiasm among the voters. You will see the level of awareness that has been created in our state. And I think which has also been created in Nigeria. Nigerians want to participate in the process. They want a clean process. They want a transparent process. And they want an electoral body that is fair, just, an electoral body that stands tall enough to deliver on its mandate.
So, sir, it seems to be Amaole versus Okojumbo, but in actual fact, let's face it, it's similar for Bara versus Nelson Wike. Now, this is affecting Rivers State in more ways than one. It's a very important state when it comes to the resource of Nigeria. The people are suffering. Nobody seems to be taking account of that. How do you see this affecting the stability politically of Rivers State? Not just that, also the people as well. Because in all of this conversation, no one has said exactly how the people are faring.
Well, what is at stake here, in my view, is the mandate of the Rivers people. that mandate is held by Governor Fubara. And it explains why, in course of this ding-dong fight, more Rivers people are standing behind the governor of happening in the political space, constitute a distraction, honestly. But as somebody who lives in Port Harcourt, somebody who is in the state, I can tell you that the government, regardless of these distractions, is focused. It's delivering on infrastructure, it's delivering on its goals, its policies. So, give and take. Yes, we could have traveled faster if this crisis was not here. Now, as Rivers people, it's like the gladiators. SCT minister must give peace a chance. We salute the demeanor of all channels of engagement who thinks that Rivers will be better if everyone were to keep the peace. And honestly speaking, regardless of the crossfires that you see, Rivers State is safe. And our people are going about their normal business without fear. You know, so, but there has to be a stop. The fact is, Fubara had elected to be his own man after the elections, in line with the aspirations, the yearnings of Rivers people. And this did not go down well with those who claim they brought him. Now, we want to commend those who brought him, but we want to insist that Fubara was brought to power to serve Rivers people. And Governor Fubara is serving Rivers people. So we would like the minister, with due respect, he's not on trial here, but as someone who has governed Rivers State, as someone who has benefited from Rivers State, thinking is that time has come for the minister to back down. While in office, he used to say Melembe, Melembe. And we would like to use the opportunity to ask the minister to Melembe in the interest of Rivers people. Okay? He served Rivers State for 8 years, and we are not aware that anyone controlled or teleguided him. And the Rivers people want Fubara to be his own man. They want Fubara to make his mistakes where possible, but they want Fubara to learn from those mistakes and govern Rivers State. He's the front man now. Our expectation is that the one who handed over to him, who told us prior to this time that he would never interfere in the running of governance in Rivers State after his tenure, should live up to his promise. And a lot of expectations here from Rivers people that our former governor will do right, not to do things that will hurt the long-term interests of Rivers State.
Mr. Nwoke, once again, still on stability, there have been arguments in many places telling that the ruling party actually benefits from this instability that's happening inside of the PDP. One would think, or one could argue, that their nonchalance regarding the situation is because they are benefiting from everything that's happening as they look forward to the elections come 2027. So what's your take on that? Why has no word come from the ruling party regarding the instability in Rivers State? And why is there that factor where Nelson Wike is still, well, working under the APC while still creating, it would seem, plenty of, instances in Rivers State where he was the past governor?
I think we have a situation where one man has his two legs, one in the PDP and one in the APC. And of course, if you looking at the trends which just played out, there have been suspensions at the national level of the acting national chairman, the national secretary, and suspensions of the publicity secretary and the legal advisor. But the governors called everybody to order saying return to status quo so that the meeting can hold on October 24th. Now, but it is instructive to note that this is not a normal situation. There's no way, if Wike wants to cross over to the APC, let him do so. He cannot serve the interests of the APC and then undermine the collective interest of those in the PDP, including struggling for leadership of the PDP in Rivers State. Everybody knows by convention that the governor of a state ought to be leader of a state. And we find this quite strange. For the first time in Rivers State, we are having somebody who has finished his tenure, who has moved on to Abuja, who wants to head the party. And like I said, these are strange times. Well, even when you talk about the APC in Rivers State, you can see that regardless of the court decision, one Tony Okocha has been hoisted on the APC. But Emeka Bika has just won a case in court, which says that there's no way an elected executive could have been thrown aside the way they did.
What do you think is
there's a
deliberate?
lot of confusion, political confusion as a result of the meddlesomeness of our brother who's in Abuja.
But do you think it's deliberate? Do you think the APC is actually gaining from this?
Of course. The destabilization of PDP states is something critical to the success of the APC in 2027. And of course, those who are serving under the watch of the president have continuously told this country that they will deliver the president in 2027. So what is happening in Rivers State is a product of that attempt, to subdue a serving government, to destabilize a peaceful state and create confusion. This is what is playing now, because there's no reason why the president shouldn't call Mr. Nyesom Wike to order. He should be called to order.
And when you look at Rivers State, I think at this point now we can target as rivers of crisis, just giving everything that's happened in the last 6 months and even further. And so it begs to ask the question, with the remaining members of the Rivers State House of Assembly, and and then the 25 vacant seats, and also Victor Okojumbo and Amawale, it just begs to ask the question: where do you think this will end? As a former member of a National House of Assembly, looking at this from a bird's eye view, you've been there, you've done this before. What is the best scenario for this to be resolved amicably for all parties involved, and consolidating on the mandate of the people of Rivers State?
First of all, we shouldn't be seeing the flip-flop that we're seeing in the courts. I think the judicial officers, particularly at the high court level, know what the position of the Supreme Court is on matters like this. And it amounts to a waste of time when judges allow those who engage in foreign shopping to confuse an already confused political climate. Now, for me, I believe that no matter what happens, all of these matters will get to the Supreme Court. And I think it's at the Supreme Court level that justice should be done. But let me say this. What you see as a political crisis, and which is true, has not affected governance in Rivers State. Yes. As you probably are aware, there's a ring road, Port Harcourt ring road, that is ongoing. There's a Trans-Canada highway that's under construction. Government here is paying strict attention to health, education, and agriculture. And we are beginning to, policies are beginning to take effect, and the people are beginning to warm up to these new directions. And no matter what happens, we are better. We are better if the peace was to be here, because the governor has already created the environment for peace. Now, regardless of what happens, no matter how much noise noisy neighbors are making, I think that we can be that the march forward in Rivers State cannot be stopped.
I have to ask you, sir, and giving a former member of the National House of Assembly, right, and meaning that you were once part of the ruling class, I have to ask, with all that's happened, with Rivers State and all that we're seeing currently with this administration, when are we ever going to get members of the ruling class who are sincere about, coming in to do work, a good work, and that is the dividends of democracy, instead of being tools and pawn in a fight that, that is clearly between two people? Because all these members that we're seeing, they're all loyal to this person or that person, but never to the people. When do we see this? How did we get here? Did we miss something along the way? Help us understand.
I think that the ambition of a man, or ambition of those who are closely associated with him, has brought us this past. Honestly, democracy works when there is the collaboration between the legislature and the executive, and when both arms of government help to create the necessary environment for the development of their people or their state, as the case may be. Now, it's unfortunate that, particularly for those who, for no reason, in broad daylight in December last year, decided to decamp. Okay, because if you look at the wordings of the Constitution, the framers did not intend that it may disagree with the state level. Now, I would think that the division that the Constitution was talking about, or is talking about, is that division that occurs at the national level. And you can see how much the PDP is even doing to ensure that there is no division at the national level. Okay, so these gentlemen hurriedly decided to abandon ship. And we have seen part of the drama. People who sang on the mandate which shall stand, who waved tiny APC flags, who addressed the press, are now performing somersaults. Now we are hearing strange things, strange arguments like their names have not been removed from the PDP register. Oh, their names have not appeared before on the APC register. Those are strange arguments. The major argument is, did they move, did they decamp? By their own words, they decamped. So, you can see, but I think that our democracy will be better for it. We are doing what we can as a nation to embrace this new way. And we want to thank God that since the practice of democracy started under this republic, it has not been in any way jettisoned. It's a good mark. And we think that, yes, we will stumble as politicians, and we will get to know better. We'll get to understand that the people come first, and that the interests of the state or the nation matters most. Now, perhaps people should also understand what people are saying outside our shores, that we don't need strong men. What we need are strong institutions. And I expect that those who are engaged in this battle, who are trying to subjugate the governor, intimidate the governor of Rivers State, who are trying to seize power, and turn him into a puppet.
Okay, we're having a bit of an issue there with Mr. Mwoke's connection. We're hoping that we can sort that out. But I was going to ask him a very interesting question, Judith, and this is regarding exactly who to pay attention to right now. If the Supreme Court has said that Martin Zamawole is a certified representative of the River State House of Assembly, and the Victor Okojambo group are saying that, no, we're going to nullify you guys, all 26 members of you who left from before. That's going against the court order, first of all. That's not all. Now, the Martin Zamawole-led group are also now telling that they're going to also nullify the appointment of 4 of the lawmakers, saying that they have not been on seat for over 150 days. So I'm wondering exactly how this plays out and who we're supposed to pay attention to. Because River State looks like a very childish situation.
And that's why I had to ask that question. I mean, and he also made a comment to that regarding the conflicting court orders and how this has also played in played his role in how this has played out. Well, I must say thank you, Mr. Ogbonna Nwoke. He's a former member of the National House of Assembly and has joined us today to share insights on this very complex issue and the political crisis in River State. We do hope for hope for a resolution for the benefit of the people of River State. What I take away from this conversation is that we're able to put the people of Rivers at the center and able to represent their voices, and what really truly matters is governance. Once again, Mr. Ogbonna, many thanks. We appreciate you for coming on. And we turn our attention now to a matter that affects every Nigerian, the rising cost of petrol and cooking gas. And it affects everyone when you think about it. And in recent months, the price hike, I beg your pardon, in petrol and cooking gas have not only increased the financial burden on households. I mean, Mizuno earlier was talking about, if he did the calculation, he's almost reaching the 500K mark when it comes to spend on energy alone. And it's not even rich. Now, but it also sparked concerns about job security and inflation now being at the highest ever, 32.70%. So the House of Representatives, led by Deputy Minority Leader Aliyu Badaki and 111 other members, has called for an immediate reversal of the price hike, citing the hardship it is causing across the country.
They've also urged the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, the NNPCL, and the Ministry of Petroleum Resources to boost local refining capacities while pressing the Central Bank of Nigeria to implement policies that could cushion the impact of rising fuel price on inflation. Meanwhile, the World Bank's recent Africa's Pulse report has warned that further increases in petrol prices could reverse the limited gains from the removal of fuel subsidies. So this morning, to help break down this critical issue and also to understand the stance of the ruling All Progressives Congress, the APC, we're joined by a chieftain of the party, Akin Bashiru. Akin Bashiru, thank you very much for being here with us today on Breakfast Central.
Very much. Good morning.
Okay. First off, let's start by asking you what your present stance is regarding the fuel price hike. And the call for it to be, revised. Where is this going to put us as Nigeria? Have we made any gains from the removal of subsidy at all? And would this, stampede whatever progress we've made?
My concern will not be different from the concern of every other Nigerian, because I'm equally feeling the pains of the current hike in price of petroleum products. So I'm a Nigerian, so I feel the things, I feel it, as you do. And if there's anything that can be done to bring it down, I will surely be in support of that. That's my initial reaction.
But the removal of subsidy itself was something that was supposed to help reform the Nigerian economy. So there were gains, or there are gains therein to be had. So if we were to remove or reverse this price hike, don't you think, or do you think that this would be counterproductive? I know that Nigerians are suffering, but then again, let's look at it statistically. How bad would this be for whatever gains we've made from before?
You see, I think what we are currently facing, for me, might be reality that we ought to have, gradually come alive with. Removal of subsidy is removal of subsidy, and it has its own implications, and that's what currently has. And like you said, there are gains
So if there are gains, it means there will be pains. There's no doubt about that.
Okay, we seem to have lost our connection once again. We're hoping that we're going to get back to our guest from before. Now, regarding the price of cooking gas, that's 15,000 naira. I also personally purchased that one for the home only recently.
Oh,
so I can imagine how much that's affecting
So let me give you a little bit of story. So
Okay.
my gas leaked.
You wasted 15,000 naira. She did. Unfortunately.
I did. I wasted 15,000 naira, and then I had to refuel it again. And yeah, it's biting. You know, it feels like a shark bite. That is an over-exaggeration, but hyperbole. But that's exactly how it feels like. You know, and that's just me. It was a single woman living in Lagos. I can only imagine what it's like for a family who constantly have to cook. You know, a family who I don't fill my gas for like a year. I was fill a year in and out. Like most times it's like 9 months or 10 months. So if I buy a gas, then that's it for the year, right? But I can only imagine a family that has to fill their gas every other month, by month, you know, tri-month, if that makes any sense, and constantly have to spend 15,000 naira.
The bigger the family, the more you want
Yeah.
gas. However, the NUC and TUC have also come out to tell that they are not in support of this price hike. Normally, would expect that from them. However, now the question is what tool or what implementation would be used to try reverse it?
Right.
Because you're not expecting the government to say, yes, we're going to just go ahead and reverse it. There will be a fight back. What would be the mode of recourse for the NUC when that happens is the question. Are we going to see yet another strike?
I remember when we had one of the members of the Lagos State NLC join us, and we asked if this fuel price goes up, what happens to 70,000 naira? Well, you know, what happens to the minimum wage? Now, NLC is at the forefront now saying they never negotiated on this. At the time, the 70,000 naira minimum wage was negotiated on. Fuel price was about, what, 700 naira? And now it has gotten a 32% increment on that. And nobody can be able to survive on that based off of the salary minimum wage they just negotiated. So clearly, they're going back to the table. But the bigger question here, and the elephant that we are not addressing in the room, is if you are saying that there shouldn't be there shouldn't be any price hike in terms of petrol and cooking gas, that means you're asking for subsidy. Because
Exactly.
you're asking for subsidy because the government cannot afford subsidy anymore. They said they cannot, even the laws, the Act, the Petroleum Act, doesn't have room for subsidy. They've said that. The price of fuel and cooking gas currently is not controlled by them. It's other variables that controls this, right? And so the question we ought to be asking now is, what can they do at this point? And do they have the willpower to do it? Whether it's investing in or going into private-public partnership in trying to revive our refineries? Should they be looking about more into infrastructural development? Should they be privatizing it? Those are the strategies that they ought to be looking at this time. Because when we're saying we cannot reverse, what you're asking for is subsidy. And it's very clear that we don't have the revenue or we don't have the money for it or there's no room for it. Also, there's the ways and means that is a different conversation. There's the borrowing, there's a different conversation. There's a need to foreign direct investment that we desperately need to boost our economy. There's that as well. And for that to happen, our energy sector has to be booming correctly.
I'll tell you something.
It has to work.
Policies and infrastructure is one thing that first world countries actually put in place before making these decisions. Nigeria's situation, we have none of these, especially infrastructure. One infrastructure that will come to mind is transportation, because that's where it bites the hardest. Yes, we have the rails in Lagos only, but then across the country you have absolutely nothing. So how does that affect the people? They have to pay more when it comes to transportation or logistics. That's the problem. Remember the World Bank rep during the NESG told that we need 15 years of this kinds of reform to get Nigeria back on track.
Right.
So how do we survive 10 years? How do we survive 10 years of this kind of hardship? Is if we have those infrastructures in place. If the focus is refocused to focus on infrastructure provision for the people so they don't have to suffer through all of this, hand-to-mouth type dealings when it comes to their income, that would serve.
Yeah.
If you can't reverse it, if you cannot put back subsidy of some sort, because it doesn't only have to apply to fuel, it could apply to anything else. But that's not what we're looking for as a country if we want this to work.
Right.
But 15 years is a long time to look to wait for. And if we know the president, he always takes these advice from external forces, international bodies, and perhaps that's what's going to happen. I don't know.
Look, I would say this, and at the risk of sounding like, you know, I'm supporting the government, I'm not supporting the government. I'm trying to be as fair and to give all the stories, give all the balance. So yes, subsidy cannot stay anymore. It has to go. But also the people cannot wait any longer because hunger is biting. So if there are going to be palliative measures, please let it not be rice. Thank you.
I did not know she was going there, but that's interesting to note. Okay.
Let's do a recap of our top stories, shall we?
Didn't see that one coming.
And here are the recap of some of the top stories we took. Reps are demanding a reversal of petrol cooking gas price hike.
And then Rivers Crisis Assembly moves against defected lawmakers.
And we'll move away from that as the African governments, they speak towards the inaction that threatens food security in African nations. And coming up next, we are going to be looking at the very tragic incident in Jigawa where scores were killed and many were injured in the tanker explosion. And also later on today, it will be the newspaper review. We'll have our guest join us here in the studio. And lastly, we'll go into the social media to find out what Nigerians are saying here on Breakfast Central. And it's time for us to find out what the big stories are making the headlines today for our front page newspaper, or rather the newspaper reviews. And joining us this morning is publisher CNK News, Chris. CKN News, there we go. Yeah, I haven't had back morning coffee. It's Chris Kane Nwandu. He is, of course, a friend of the house here, and he joins us at the table this morning to review the newspaper front pages. You're welcome, and good morning to you.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning.
As always.
So this morning we're going to be starting with the Punch newspaper. Let's take a look and see at the front page for the Punch. If you have the Punch, this would be the stories that hit you. Fuel price hike, of course, is top on the table. Reps warn of unrest as FG Labour meeting deadlock. Government plans fresh meeting with union leaders as reps demand petrol price review. And at the top there, NNPC still sold Dangote petrol buyers as marketers. That's very interesting. Nigeria's high interest rate will stay for long, says the World Bank, and PDP may postpone NEC meeting. Governors plot Damagun's exit. That on page 2. At the bottom, under the photo story for this morning, tears as Jigawa buries 153 tanker explosion victims. Trucks burnt in Ogun. 25% of development levy for students loan by the federal government. And Ogun communities residents relocate as flood waters rises. And Naira weakens to 100, or rather, oh, don't I wish. Naira weakens to 1,705 Naira per dollar at parallel market. I'm going to come right to Mr. Kende here because he just made a reaction to that one. What was that reaction? Devil's advocate here, I already know, I can imagine, but what's your take on the fact that our Naira is going further down when it comes to its relationship with the dollar?
Yes, it has to be. Those are monetary policies and economic policies that drive such. But we remember what happened some months back when we were made to believe that At the point it got to 1,000 naira or 919 naira, and everybody was just jubilating that, oh, we've gotten it. And people like us continue to say then that this is just a mirage. It's just some people are just pumping money, dollars into the system, because it's a very simple fact. If you are not producing enough and you are not exporting enough, there's no way you can earn dollars. We don't print dollars, what we print is naira. So it's a factor of what you'll be able to export to able to earn. Once you do that, then that will be able to stabilize the naira. And we made a very huge mistake, and we continue to say it, when we try to float the naira to the dollar, as we did, just like the same mistake we made when we removed subsidy on petroleum products. That is what has kept us to today. And you can understand what the same people that are telling you that, oh, we have to float the naira, oh, the naira is over. As of yesterday, the naira has been devalued for over about 45% of its original value. And that in itself is a big problem. That is why you are seeing the high rate of inflation going up. You saw what the MBS, what they released a few days ago, the rate of inflation. So, until we export more, until we earn enough foreign exchange, we cannot be. And what do? We are only depending on our crude oil. But the crude oil itself is not crude again.
We're not producing as much as
anymore.
anymore.
Much, we are not. And so those are the factors. So whatever anybody does, there was other things that I told you behind this. I'm not going to mention here. So, but
I was hoping you were going to do that. Anyway, very quickly, remember that you can call in to be part of the discussion this morning. If you have any comments you'd like to, make a contributions, go ahead and do so. The numbers are now on your screen. Wherever you are, you can call in, and we'll definitely get to hear your thoughts and your opinions and contributions on today's review. We'll switch gears now away from the Punch newspaper now to the Daily Independent. And the very first one that comes at you there, federal government to review fuel transportation safety protocols across states. 140 killed in Jigawa tanker explosion get mass burial. Tinubu dispatches delegation, directs emergency aid. The NMDPRA probes incident. Shatima Abbas Lokpopiri and First Lady mourn. That story is on page 29. Reps to ask federal government to submit 2025 budget for timely passage. Seek reversal of petrol price hike. That story is on page 7. The 2009 renegotiation agreements. Nasu Sanu kick over preferential treatment ASU gets from federal government. That story is on page 29 as well. Lagos will pay 85,000 naira as minimum wage. Sanwo-Olu, you can find that story on page 6. Tinubu Shatima's absence doesn't signify leadership vacuum. That's from the presidency there. And that story is on page 6 as well. Nasu accuses minister of ignoring Tinubu's directive on 50% withheld salaries. That story is also on page 6. Now, when you go to the other side of it there, impeachment scare jolts NAS with DSS unusual presence. Akpabio doses fear, asks the committee to probe security police action. You can find that story. At the bottom there, Shatima jets to Sweden for high-stakes bilateral discussions. You can find that story on page 7. At the very top, federal government, NLC, TUC hold marathon meeting over fuel price hike. And of course, right next to it, Agbakova writes now, says EFCC is an unlawful organization. You can find the stories and more right here on the Daily Independent. You can pick up a copy. But so many interesting ones to sink your teeth in. But I am very intrigued. Should, I don't think the word is should. A high-level, high-stakes bilateral discussions, does the vice president have to go?
Well, they say he has to go.
Does he have to?
Well, you're putting me
because
on the
there are
spot.
other ministers. There are other ministers that can do the same job, that can have very high-level bilateral discussions that are actually tasks with that job.
That's something I always say on this program, on that platform where I find myself. I say Nigeria is like Charlie Boy Show. If you watch Charlie Boy Show very well in the days of Charlie Boy Show, on Charlie Boy Show, it can happen. And that is what that is Nigerian for you. So if you understand what I mean. So it's the case of the absorb for people like me. Where the president of the country has to be out of the country. The vice president also jetted out and giving excuses, and that was being justified by the spokesperson of the government. of the president yesterday and giving all sorts of reasons, it does not make any sense. In a country where we're having serious challenges, one, economic challenges, issue of poverty, the issue of food, and just even taking it a bit further, just 2 days ago or yesterday, there was a crash in Jigawa State where over 120 Nigerians lost their lives.
140.
It has risen to about 140.
140.
Over 140 Nigerians lost their lives. I expected that since the president is not in the country, that the vice president ought to have gone there. Forget whatever anybody says. But what did he do? He jetted out, and they're justifying it. The president of the United States will never do that. In fact, if there's by any imagination, 1 or 2 people die for whatever reason within the United States for something, the president will go there personally. That is empathy. So what these people are just trying to show is that they don't care. What matter? What is the bilateral? What is the bilateral in the bilateral he's going to? What is he going to sign? What kind of meeting that he cannot send the secretaries to the government to go and do? That he cannot send the minister of foreign affairs, what minister of even ambassadors, even if we don't have ambassadors there. Yeah. What is it that is going to do there? That the president of the country, to just be, for me, these people are just taking Nigerians for granted, no matter whatever way you want to justify it. Now we are talking about the issue of the NLC, the TUC, trying to meet with government on issue of minimum wage, which is not even being paid. And we are having the excruciating pains Nigerians are going through. I'm just coming now. The fuel queues are all over the place again in Lagos. Despite the fact that the prices have risen to up to 1,100 and rest of them, and across the nobody. So what they say, and they are telling you, oh, the president and the vice president can be able to live from anywhere. We have people like that. Is not how a country. It shows us as a country that is not serious-minded. Even if you are going to sign economic policies, when people you are going to meet with, look back and see what is happening in your country, and realize that even your president and the vice president are not on ground. Then that means that they just think that these guys are...
Regarding Kennedy, I think that the import or the weight of it is not really hitting Nigerians regarding the vacuum that has been caused here with Shatima and Tinubu outside the country. However, what is the worst case scenario that could happen where you have that kind of a vacuum?
Worst case scenario? Well, normally if the president is traveling out of the country, for a certain period he's supposed to hand over to the vice president. The president didn't do that. He said he's going away for 2 weeks. So, which means that He's expected back, however. Yes, he says he's expected. That's what I'm saying, within 2 weeks. But don't forget that they told us that from London that the president is also going to Paris. Whatever he's going to do there, I don't know. So he's within the ambit of the law. He's still okay. But the vice president also leaving. So if for whatever reason, what you are saying that automatically it is the Senate president that is in charge, give and take. God, if God forgive anything happens, is the Senate president. But even the Senate president, you can see what is coming out of the papers. How DSS were allegedly in NAS yesterday. So there's also some kind of problem within this. But
we're going to get to the state of the nation very quickly, but we understand we do have a caller, Lennon. Lennon is calling from Abuja, if I am correct. Good morning to you, Lennon, and thank you so much for calling this morning.
Good morning, Mark. Good morning, everyone in the studio.
Good morning. Please go ahead.
I want to first of all sympathize with people that died in that tank explosion. I want to talk about what your guest is saying. It is very, very pathetic. Like, it's very, very sad. It's very, very pathetic. Sometimes we just feel like crying, like we find ourselves in this type of country ruled by this type of people. The president left 2 weeks ago. Well, I just woke up now and they said the vice president has left. It's like into a house that there's a problem in the house. The children are complaining of hunger and starvation. People are attacking the children. And the house is leaking. The father has already left. Now, the children are complaining of hunger. The mother left the house. And the children are just left to wonder. There's nobody to take care of them. That is just clear analysis. Because this is not fair. 130 Nigerians died. The two people in government, the state of power, they are not there to be found. Nobody has gone there to sympathize with these people. Do they even have heart at all? I don't know. People will be elect. People call leaders. People who are not leaders. They are just there to occupy it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lennon, for that. Chris, I have to ask, right? And I'm going to ask about the position of opposition. I'm going to ask about it every single time. Because I'm going to give you two instances of when we've seen absence of vacuum of the presidency. Number one was during the late President Yar'Adua, may so rest in peace, when he was far away and we didn't know, we were not hearing any news. Opposition rose up to even members of the party rose up to occasion and said, look, there's a vacuum, the vice president has to step in, right? There was that. And also during the time of former President Muhammadu Buhari, when he was away, there was a lot of vocal criticism about the vacuum, and very, very quickly, they heed the call, and former Vice President Yemi Osinbajo stepped in and started to steer the affairs of the nation in place of the presidency. Where is the opposition in all of this?
Because you ask yourself, is there an opposition?
What? Is there an opposition?
I'm throwing it back at you. Is there an opposition? We don't have any opposition party any longer. And I want to believe it's either it's deliberate like that, it was deliberately being made, or some people don't know what they ought to do. And you have to ask yourself, the opposition, okay, let's pick them. Basically, the two major opposition parties are the PDP and Labour Party. The PDP still struggling to find itself, in-house fighting, suspension, resuspension, recall, on recall, and the rest of them. So they are not even having, within themselves, they have issues. Labour Party, that's supposed to be the kind of another opposition. You see what is happening, the Abure faction, the Usman is in, yes, Usman, that woman faction, they are not, they are, it's just like what China is saying is the book, Things Fall Apart. Things Fall Apart, and the center cannot hold.
This will be the theme for Nigeria. Everybody's saying that.
It is Things Fall Apart, the center can no longer hold, and that is a problem. And
what about also members of the APC themselves? I mean, there has to be. We've seen it cracked on dissent. There are numbers of persons who have come out. For example, Senator Ali Ndume. There was the other senator. I forget his name now, who also stepped up and have spoken against the own party, and we saw the level of heavy-handedness that was meted against.
Have you heard of a table manners? You laugh now. Make I just maybe you don't forget. Just laugh. Have you heard of table manners? You know what table manners now? I don't need to repeat myself. Yeah. That's what they chop for table. You know the guy is everybody. So let us not just let's just deceive ourselves. The fact is that what I am saying is that, but most of it are not. People used to say that the people get the government they deserve. Oh. I think yes, and that is for me what is happening.
Very good.
But I have to say this: no matter how you take people for granted, one day something will give. Okay. Whatever that will be, I don't know.
We're going to move on now to our next daily front page, and this would be the Daily Trust, if I'm not mistaken. Front page for the Daily Trust. Once again, Jigawa tanker inferno, grieving families recount incidents as over 120 buried. I lost 4 children. 5 Almajiri policemen among victims. NMA urges members to offer help. Tinubu governor's speaker, others mourn. Tinubu outside the country, however. At the top, Senate investigates alleged plot to impeach Akpabio, and reps to Tinubu transmits 2025 budgets to National Assembly without further delay. Lawmakers demand reversal of petrol price hike. We talked about that one from earlier. And also Shetima heads for Sweden as Nigerians await Tinubu's return, thereby the vacuum we spoke about. FG deploys satellites to monitor terrorists and bandits. And on page 7 there, Sokoto begins sale of subsidized rice at 38,700 naira per bag. Here we go again. Lagos announces 85,000 naira minimum wage for workers. Congratulations. That sounds like something people should celebrate. But let's talk about the tanker instance. It's still less than half a dollar, half of $100 actually. Grieving families in Jigawa, 140 is what we've heard from this morning, people who have died, 120 buried. The federal government is reviewing protocol when it comes to how we transport fuel across the country. This is something that's happened many times from before, and we're still very dependent on transportation by trucks. We had the president of IPMAN the other day on some of our shows, and he told about the fact that, yes, it's something that it has been talked about, but that it is a safe procedure. We don't have the pipelines anymore to actually ferry from here to there across the country. What can be done to make the situation something of the past?
To me, I look at 2 basic factors. if you ask me, and I've not been there, but you have to if you investigate properly, one of the major causes of that accident could have been the roads. Yeah, I want to be sure. I want to be corrected. So probably, if the road was that bad, then the tanker find itself within that stretch. There's a possibility that that was what led to the accident and the spilling. It could also be mechanical fault, but I'm hanging the first on the road. The second one to the question is now the issue of poverty. Because poverty has so enshrined our lives and lifestyle that people look out for easy opportunity to be able to make ends meet, not knowing the dangers inherent. This is not the first time. We used to have those, what happened, I think it was in cocoa in the 80s or 90s, we used to have the same thing happened in Lagos, some part of Lagos, where NNPC pipeline was destroyed and people were scooping. And you see time and time again with all the challenges. So until we do the needful, and riding up on this, I believe that the money we are spending so much on trying to construct the Lagos-Calabar, if we use it to make sure that all our roads
I
are
hate to
in
call
place.
you Chris.
Yes,
we have a caller. Desmond is calling us from Lagos. Desmond, a very good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning, my dear sister.
Please go ahead with your contribution this morning.
Yeah. Yeah, good morning, my dear. Good morning, Mr. General. Yeah, it's very unfortunate that you are facing this type of critical situation in Nigeria. Very, very unfortunate. And come to think about it, this fuel stuff is 50% the problem we are facing here. It affects virtually everything the farmers are doing. How can a man be into a full-time agriculture and his family is really facing hunger? It is unthinkable. If our government are flamboyantly deceiving themselves, using our money anyhow they like, flying up and down, it's no longer news that hunger is killing Nigerians. And they're taking this thing for granted. As it is now, the politicians should know that their cause is freedom. Because the way it's going, Nigeria is sitting on a time bomb as I'm speaking with you. Nigeria is sitting on a typical time bomb. Enough of this rubbish, although their time is up. The politicians need to be gathered and collect all the money they have stolen from this country. In fact, I'm calling for military takeover. The cost of maintaining civilian regime is far out of hand. When the military were there, they did a lot of things. Nigeria was good. I am calling for military takeover. Enough of this nonsense. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Desmond. Desmond just mentioned something that everybody's scared to actually talk about, but we would also like to note that the views there are those of Desmond on his own individual views there, not of News Central. Thank you very much. But that's a representative of what people out there are actually thinking about, what they're talking about.
The soaring cost of living.
Well, we can't talk, we've said that time and time again, and so just that all the measures, the economic measures that are being put in place by this current government is not working. Pre-May 29, 2023, the price of petroleum was about 179 to about 180 mass.
175 actually.
So let's say 175. So now we are talking of, I don't even know how, I'm not good in mathematics.
Depends where you are, 100, so 100, 1,000.
That's 1,000 something percent.
As I bought
yes, yes. Yeah. So that is on that part. The same thing, dollar was at about 700 or thereabout. We are talking of 1,700. All these things have multiple effects. And every day they'll continue to tell us, oh, it will get bad before it gets better. It's not like that all over the world. Yes, it will get bad, but not this type. It's not this type. And they're here sitting in Abuja, and somebody's come from World Bank and telling them that, oh, continue with the policies. It will take about 10, 15 years before things can get better. And they were clapping for him. That shows you the level of... I still believe, and as I said it, something is going to give. And what we give is whether Nigerians in 2027, when we're going to have another second election, will be able to look at the current leaders and say, yes, they've done enough for us to give them another mandate. But you know that what will happen? most often than not, they always find their way around it. There's a story I was thinking that we just talk before we.
Real quick.
Is the one of the abolition of EFCC. That is a very, very big story we should be talking about. Because from a senior advocate of Nigeria and the former president of NBA, Olisa Gbakoba, yesterday came to join action with the 16 governors who are currently at the Supreme Court for them to abolish the EFCC, saying that the act setting up EFCC is contradiction to Section 13 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. Whether that is going to be true or not, but it's a fundamental issue that is about our anti-corruption agencies. But I hope within the next few weeks that the Supreme Court will come out on a judgment of that. But if you ask me, I know that EFCC is still as relevant as it should. We can only be strengthening the laws establishing it.
Right. I mean, yeah, I'm so glad you put that there, your final statement there. We can always strengthen the law and, take it out of obscurity. But one thing is certain and very, very, very pertinent. Whether or not they do their job as well as we'd like, we still need the watchdog, the anti-graft organization, the only way we can check and balance when it comes to corruption of our ex-governors. Chris, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you very much for having me. Do have a nice day.
You too. Chris Ikende Umudu here is the publisher, CKN News, and he joined us to just give us our newspaper review here. We're going on a short break. When we come back, we go to Jigawa. There's a very tragic event that unfolded there in Majiya town. We'll tell you all about it after the break. Stay here.
And you're welcome back. Now we turn to the tragic event in Majiya town, Taura local government area of Jigawa state, where a petrol tanker explosion has claimed the lives of about 140 people. Now the victims were reportedly attempting to scoop fuel from the wreckage when the explosion occurred. Now, as we reflect on this devastating incident, we are joined by the route commander, that's Elizabeth Oluwadamilola Jayala, Lagos Sector Public Education Officer of the Federal Road Safety Corporation, to discuss what measures can be taken to prevent future tragedies like this. Now, the risks of fuel scooping and also motorists and first responders, what they can do. And that's why she's here. You're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Thank you. Well, I mean, let's begin and address, this tragic tanker explosion that happened in Jigawa. Very, very sad. And people, we heard that, villagers were scooping fuel from the wreckage when the explosion occurred. From an FRSC standpoint and being an education, just educating the public, why do you think incidents like this happen to so often? This is not the first we've seen. It's not the second time we've seen it. And what can be done to educate the public about the dangers of fuel scooping?
Okay, first let's look at the incessant cases of the tankers accident. Now, I think first thing is fatigue management. They travel almost like a 24 hours trip. And then you look at, are they well? Are they okay? Do they have time to rest between the time of travel? That's one of the things they need to check. And I think that's a responsibility of the company that owns the tanker. You understand? It's a responsibility for them. There's this thing we preach in Federal Road Safety. There's a safe to load initiative that we have put in place. This is to ensure that no tanker, no fleet vehicle comes out of a particular company without being properly checked. Do you understand? So we check for so many things, and if they don't meet the standard of the safe to load initiative, they are not allowed to load. Then we need to look at the company where these vehicles are coming from. Do they have this in place? All over Lagos, I think we have to a reasonable extent, we have our men in companies where they are the ones checking that are these vehicles moving out? Are they meeting the safety requirements?
What are these requirements? What are these standards that the FRC is
There are
holding
so
on
many
to?
standards. We have come from the side of the driver itself, the vehicle itself, and then the operators. So there are 3 standards that we have put in place. And then we need to check the drivers, we need to check the vehicles they are bringing out. Are these vehicles well managed enough to be on the road? Are they safe enough to be on the road? So then you look at the speed limit of this vehicle. The speed limit of this vehicle. Then again, we've been preaching against night travels because of poor visibility. Like I said, the fatigue management comes in. You know, you're driving at night, the visibility of the road is not there. Possibly, like we said, of the standard of the vehicle, if the lights are not well lit. They're supposed to be on the road.
They'll make a case and say that they travel by night because they are trying to avoid the busyness of the day and the markets and the road jams. The night time is much more faster to get to the destination.
If you have to do this, do you have the requirements that allows you to travel at night? The lights, the management of the driver, the management of the vehicle, do they have it?
And when it comes to educating, let's talk about educating the public about the dangers of fuel scooping. This is not the first time, second or third time. For as long as I can remember, I've seen cases like this where they run to go scoop fuel, it explodes.
You know, we've preached this a lot of time. I use preach because it's more like we are now bringing people to know what to do and what not to do. Now, when you want to, when an accident like this happens, the first thing to do is not to go and start scooping fuel. We know what happens when you put, there are some things there are some materials that explodes when you bring them close to fuel. And then these people are not enlightened enough to know that these materials are not supposed to even get to some meters towards this fuel thing. And then they bring them to scoop and then it explodes. So we preach from time to time to let them know that don't go close. Allow the management agencies that are supposed to work so that the lives of the communities, the citizens within that community will be safe.
Are there any physical efforts that the FRC has put in place to educate people? Not drivers now, but people regarding these kinds of instances. If you say that they need to be enlightened, then what's the FRC doing?
We're doing a lot. We go to mosque, we go to church, we preach this every now and then. Now, in Lagos State now, the preaching has even gone higher than it used to be, because we now have the Lekki Maritime Corridor experiencing the movement of vehicles, these vehicles, this tanker fuel transportation vehicles more frequently than before because of Dangote distribution of PMS. Do you understand? So we now go out to educate people that in case this happens, you are not supposed to do this. And then because you are now going to experience more movement of this kind of vehicles, then there is need for you to be careful. So we're doing that.
Okay. There was also talk about the fact that the tanker driver lost control. That kind of like impugns what structure was on ground. Did he lose control over bad portions of the road? What was the state of the road? What is the state of the roads when it comes to the Nigerian road systems?
We know what the state of the roads are. And we are trying our best, like I said before, we have departments in FRC. We have a department that is responsible for road audits. And then after this audit, we post this, the reports to the appropriate quarters. Now, we've talked about the speed limit. You find out that when the roads are not good, we have accidents, but they are different from the kind of accidents we have when the roads are very good. And then we talk about speed limit. We talk about speed limit devices in the vehicles. Are they applied? Are they there?
Are they supposed to have these as standard?
Yes, they're supposed to have this as part of the standard.
And who monitors these?
The company.
Not the FRSC.
The FRSC monitors. But if we know these companies, you know, when we say safety is not a responsibility of one person, it's a responsibility of all. So you have an organization, you have fleets of vehicles. Your responsibility is to look out for your business, the people working for you, and your tools. Do you understand? So you approach us. I have vehicles, then we come monitor, we come see for the maintenance of the vehicles, the drivers, and your tools. So if you have this, you collaborate with us, you come close. You know, we can't have it all. We can't be here and there. I will not know the numbers of vehicles we have in New Central. Do you understand? And then, if New Central comes out to say, oh, we have these numbers of vehicles and we need you to do this, we do drivers training and certification so that it's not just about hiring drivers. Are they good enough? Are they good enough? Do they know what to do? Do they know the conditions of the roads you're sending them to? And then are you managing them well? So these are the things we need
And
to
when
do.
all else fails, if there are no devices inside the vehicles and they are stopped by the FRSC, what course do you take then? If you find that they have no protocol, they're following no protocol.
They are not following protocols.
And I'm talking about tankers now, tanker drivers
We
specifically.
make them go through the necessary standards. When we meet with them, we invite them to come. And then we make them go through the necessary
Now I'm talking
standards.
about on the ground. Like a tank has been stopped and it's been observed that he has none of these protocol being observed.
That's what I'm saying.
What will the
FRSC do at that point in time?
time?
We bring them in. We make them go through. First, we book them accordingly. That's part of the enforcement that we do. And then we now make them go through the standards so that they don't put themselves into danger. The drivers will not put himself into danger, and also the citizens of the communities that they are applying.
Okay. I have to ask. I'm going to share a story. I remember, I can't remember the year. I don't know if it was 2011 or 2010 or 2009, but it was leaving Calabar and going to, I don't know if it was either Uyo or heading to the northern part of Cross River. And the link road, it's a federal road, so both states have decided not to, walk on the road. And so it had many craters, many boulders, manholes, named a few. And so a tanker, a heavy-duty tanker, tipped over. And a man who was on the other side trying to, he was working with a construction team, ran to the tanker to try to pull one of the boys who was on the other side of the passenger side, crushed over. And as he got there, very close to pulling him out, it was so close, it explodes. And the first responders, what they were doing was they were throwing sand at it. And so I have to ask you, seeing that, I had never felt as helpless as I did that day because we didn't know what to do. He was trying to help and he got stuck in the fire. He died, literally. But watching that and seeing that, what should first responders do in hazardous situations like this that involve fuel and heavy-duty tankers that are carrying fuel? And
the first thing they need to do is to call the appropriate quarters. For FRSC, we have a toll-free number, 122, that they can call, and then you call the fire service. Whatever you can do within the means of, the community, they can actually come in to do. But calling the people that are responsible for saving this particular situation is the appropriate thing, the first appropriate thing to do. Do you understand? So.
And also, I think it's best for us to tell our viewers that are watching situations that are dire, that they know that they cannot help and they're not equipped to help. For example, the young man, may he so rest in peace. He was just trying to help. And he was ignorant of how dire the situation or how, it could be his demise, So what are the situations that you shouldn't put yourself in at all? Instead, call the professionals.
What we preach is your safety comes first. Your safety comes first. Now, that person is already in danger. What do you do in that situation? I've just outlined it. Call the appropriate agency. Let them come in to do the appropriate thing. Instead of you putting yourself in danger, we are equipped. We go in swiftly and do whatever we want to do. And when you call 122, it doesn't take any time to get us. So
Now, I have to say that this was on the outskirts of town, and the same incident that happened here was also on the outskirts of town. Tura, local government area of Jigawa, Mejiya town, right? So this is clearly on the outskirts. What is FRSC doing regarding sensitization and educating those in the remote area of Nigeria?
We have state commands and we have units, what you call subunits. We have outposts, we have zebra that are responsible for clearing of accident and the victims. We are almost in every area. We are in local government, from one local government to local government. So those in the local government will preach to the communities. So we go from one space to another space to preach to the people of the communities. So like in Lagos State, we have people in local governments, we have people in other towns. So when things happen, you can be sure that we'll swiftly get into it.
Well, I want to say thank you very much, Elizabeth Oluwadami Lola Jayola. She is the Lagos State Public Education Officer, and education is the word here. And I'm hoping to see plenty of these happening across the country, especially as Nigeria is facing a very bad economic downturn here, and people want to find any means they can to make any money.
Yes,
we hope that these meet the people's ears and that they're able to readjust.
And I also hope you and I will do more.
Oh, yes.
Oh, when it comes to that's literally our job, isn't it?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, this is all we're going to draw the curtains for this discussion here. Our heart goes out to those who lost their lives, and also a reminder that when you see something or hear something, you come first. So make sure to call the numbers, the FRSC numbers, as much as you can. We're going to end this conversation and then we'll take a break. When we come back on the other side, we find out what Nigerians are saying. There was a blackout. Did you know that? Find out more after the break. Here we are. You're welcome. It's time for us to tell you what Nigerians are saying. And this time, it's about the power grid. Now, if you didn't know, on Monday, the grid collapsed at about 6:18 p.m., plunging many into darkness. Now, checks by correspondent confirmed that power generation dropped from 3.87 gigawatts at 5 p.m. to 3.56 gigawatt at 6 p.m. and then it was a total 0.00 gigawatt by 7 p.m., 8 p.m. Reacting to this, electricity consumers in everywhere decried the incessant grid collapse. But this is not the first time. In this year alone, the grid has collapsed approximately more than 6 times. And so we went on social media to find out what Nigerians are saying. And trust Nigerians, they have plenty to say. Let's roll those tweets, shall we? We start off with this first one here from @FlyRasta. He goes, Nigeria is the country where when the national grid collapses, nobody cares about babies in incubators or people in ICU. But when the NEPA workers decide to go on strike, then the emergency lovers of Nigeria would tell us how inhumane they are for letting babies die. Well, food for thought there. We'll move on to the next one here. This is the Navigator. He goes, Nigeria in darkness. National grid collapses. So many people's gadgets has gone off. Petrol prices on the high side and out of reach. Many can't afford petrol in generators, talk less in the car. Economy in total shambles. Hunger everywhere. How much more can we take? God help us. Of course, Nigerians always resort to praying. This one here is from Adonis. There he goes, the national grid has collapsed, plunging a huge part of the nation into darkness and exposing the fragility of Nigeria's power infrastructure. How long must Nigerians endure a system that fails to provide one of the critical necessities for a productive society? Naija for better. Hey, chai. We'll move on to our next one, shall we? This one here is Imolenimi. Hopefully I got it correctly. @Atupa_me. National grid don't collapse. Fuel is 1,300 naira per liter. Won't we be so happy if it was 130 naira? Nigeria is in trouble, and emojis of him crying, and of course, emoji of a broken heart. That's how we feel. Our hearts are broken. This one here is from Ayotobi Bams. It's also @A2Tobi. It goes, 2 each state should have, I think this was a thread, but this one caught our eye. It says, 2, each state should have its own independent power grid, its own power control system, its own power generation center, its own power transmission center, its own distribution center, its own power supply center, and the 200, 300 towns will not depend on the capital's grid. Now, we've had conversations about this numerous times, and the thing is, we don't have the willpower for it. And lastly, this one was my favorite, all right? I can't see his handle, but his Kunle. And he goes, if I want this F4 again, if it turn to Agbo, give me light, FFS, with a crying emoji face. And that one was a banger tweet. It had me in stitches the entirety of the day when I saw it. But that's all of the tweets that we can take for today. That's all Nigerians were saying about the power grid. And one thing is for certain, we need to do something. We need an overhaul of the entirety of the system. Although the power distribution companies, the DISCOs, have been distributed and they're working perfectly fine, doing the job that they ought to do. But until we're able to get off the load of the power grid and have the willpower to do the correct thing with the power grid, we'll continue to see what we're seeing. Until then, only time will tell. Will they be able to do it? Who knows, Mizuno? Will they be able to do it?
Well, I think that they might. I don't know. Let me not say. I would like to re-echo what was said at the United Nations General Assembly, the focus on renewable energy and how this can help Africa. In fact, the team actually called for investment in Nigerian renewable energy sources. So perhaps maybe that's the way to go. Oh, by the way, since the fuel price hike, there's been plenty of people considering what do you call it now, CGN?
CNG, the compressed natural gas.
So
are you going to get one?
Yes, I will.
I trust you.
I will.
I trust you.
I'm done with fuel. Thank you very much to everybody who joined us since 7 a.m. This is it for us. We wish we could join you again tomorrow, but we're back to regular hosts here for Breakfast Central. And until then, it's goodbye from myself, Mazino Appeal, and
Judith, the TV is goodbye. Stick around. Coming up at the top of the hour at 9 a.m. will be the news. And of course, at 10 a.m., the ladies of Jasiri will join you for a stellar edition of a Thursday. My name is Judith, the TV. It's goodbye from us. Oliver and Osara will be back tomorrow. We'll see you on Saturday.